Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner has admitted she did not pay enough tax on the purchase of her home in Hove, and she had considered resigning, she says. She's been under intense scrutiny recently over her tax affairs after reports of her purchase of this flat. This morning, she gave an interview to Sky News in which she said reports that she hadn't paid enough tax on the property were accurate. Let's remind ourselves of what she said.
I spoke to my family about it. I spoke to my ex-husband, who has been an incredibly supportive person, because he knows that all I've done is try and support my family and help them.
Like, you did think about, should I pack it in for the sake of the family, but your family are backing you to come out today and explain this.
The number one priority for me and my ex-husband has always been to support our children and do the best thing for our children.
Presumably you deeply regret this because of potentially the fallout for you. Do you think your position, Angie Rayner, even though you've explained it, do you think it's sustainable? Do you think you can carry on as particularly Housing Minister?
Well, I made a mistake based upon the advice that I relied upon, that I received at the time, and a leading expert has now said that advice was wrong. I think hopefully most people can see if you rely on advice given to you by lawyers and you follow that process and then you find out that that process is wrong and that advice was wrong, I'm rectifying it at the earliest opportunity. People make mistakes, but I conducted myself in trying to do the right thing, and I hope that people can see that.
So, do you accept that explanation? Do you feel sorry for the Deputy Prime Minister? Or do you think she has no choice at all but to resign? We can also have a listen to what Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch had to say about this, and also to the Prime Minister's response.
I also welcome the fact that the Deputy Prime Minister has referred herself to the ethics advisor. She has admitted she underpaid tax. So why is she still in office?
In relation to the Deputy Prime Minister, she has explained her personal circumstances in detail. She's gone over and above in setting out the details, including Mr. Speaker, yesterday afternoon, asking a court to lift a confidentiality order in relation to her own son. I know from speaking at length to the Deputy Prime Minister just how difficult that decision was for her and her family. But she did it to ensure that all information is in the public domain. She has now referred herself to the independent advisor. That is the right thing to do. But I can be clear, I am very proud to sit alongside a Deputy Prime Minister.
Paula, you're a lawyer. Let's start with you.
Yes.
Do you think she has a leg to stand on here, or do you think she's going to have no choice at all at some point, either later today or tomorrow morning? We're going to hear that she's bitten the dust, fallen on her sword, and that's goodbye.
So we know that she has reported herself to the ethics advisor. Let's allow them to do their job. Can I say I feel nothing but utter sympathy for this woman? I really, really do. And I am so concerned for her presentation. She's clearly struggling under all this stress. There was this court order in place that meant that she couldn't speak about her personal circumstances. And the scenario that I can imagine in that circumstance would be that if I had a disabled child, if that child's finances and care was being provided for under a trust, that the trust may make an application to the court to say, Paula, we know you're going through a difficult time, but we do not want you to speak about your personal circumstances in case it impacts on the child. So she would have not been able to say what she'd have wanted to say. She's also told us quite clearly that she was reliant on legal advice. I am one of those people, Vanessa, who would be giving that legal advice. I can completely understand the scenario that she would have been caught in. Will she have to step down and go? I suspect she will. Why?
Right.
Because of the lack of compassion that we have.
But let's be clear and let's be careful here. First of all, you don't just get given legal advice, you have to ask for it. So you go and see a lawyer and you say, I'm divorcing my husband, I'm no longer going to be, or at least I don't want to appear to be, living in our family house in Ashton-under-Lyne. I'm actually buying an £800,000 flat in Hove. What is the advice that you can give me about minimising my tax liability? They don't just accost you in the street and foist advice on you. you. You pay them for the advice that you ask for. So she must have been seeking advice about her tax matters, mustn't she? Likewise, the trust that you say, the trust might have said, you know, do not disclose anything about this. She is very, very likely to be the trust. She and her ex-husband, it would be absolutely extraordinary were they not the administrators of the trust that they have set up for their child. So, you know, the decisions about it will not have been inflicted on her, A, by a lawyer, or B, by the trust, will they?
So we need to be careful about this, because what we understand the situation to be so far is that this wasn't actually about the family home. It was actually about the trust, and that she had sold her share of the family home to the trust.
OK, can I just interrupt you just for a second, because you're a lawyer and you get deeply into the minutiae, certainly.
Yes.
And as we're not paying you your lawyer's fee, I don't think we can even afford it for a start.
Don't want the
I don't want
viewers
any
to fall
tax
asleep
liability to
either.
fall on the programme. I don't want this programme to have to pay tax. But seriously, though, lots of people, I think, listening and watching this will think the joy and beauty of Angela Rayner was that she was one of us. She was approachable.
Yes.
She had both feet on the
Yes.
ground. She'd
Yes.
come up the hard way. She'd worked like hell.
Yes.
We could relate to her. She was just an ordinary person like us.
Yes.
Then they start hearing about trusts and £800,000 flats, grace and favour apartments, taking yourself off the deeds or something, paying council tax in one place because it's meant to be your residence, so you're paying it at a certain rate, but different, stamp duty because it's not your residence, you know, all this kind of thing. And to people who are not trained lawyers, it all sounds, doesn't it, desperately complicated. Let me bring in my other panellists here. I'll bring William in. It sounds too complicated for an ordinary, approachable, one of us kind of a person's tax affairs, doesn't it?
Listen, you can forget about the excuses, you can forget about the so-called legal advice, and we can wade in, we can make quite strong points of view here. To my mind, this is a classic example of left-wing humbug, of socialist hypocrisy, where someone in opposition has lambasted the Tory scum, for lording it up and being tax evaders, tax dodgers. You know, it has nothing to do with the advice. The principles are, if you get into government, you need to be very upfront and make that judgment yourself to pay, you know, more than you should. It's not about remaining within the exact letters of the law. When you go into politics, wide-eyed, eyes wide open, as she would have done, she'd been a politician all her life and a brilliant one as well, you know that it's a roller coaster ride of excitement, of highs and lows. And you know, when things go difficult and you're exposed, what you don't do is do a Rachel Reeves, you know, you don't go on television and start crying. You know, the people crying out there, the people in hospitality who are being taxed to death, the farmers who are being taxed to death because of the unfair inheritance changes in the system. The nation, the country, is the one that's weeping. Does she stay? Does she go? I really couldn't care less. I wish the whole lot of them would go, because I think they're shambolic, disingenuous lefties who are destroying this country. I would just say one thing. I feel a slight smidgen of sympathy for the human who's being torn to shreds, but you ask for it if you get into this position.
Calum, I mean, it's you know, a big deal, isn't it? When William says he doesn't care if she stays or goes, I think there'll be people everywhere thinking it matters very much indeed, because she's the Deputy Prime Minister of this country. And, you know, we talk of leaders that you want to emulate, leaders that you are inspired by, and, you know, leaders that actually lead you in the right direction, not the wrong direction, not to a scallywag of a lawyer who might, God forbid, give you the wrong advice that you then blame them for on television.
And I've needed some lawyers' advice in my time, and I'll say that, you know, you as much as you might take it on board, when you have that role and you are leading the way, you've got to protect your own assets as well. So you can't blame it outwards on someone else. But, you know, I think from all the calls we've heard and all the people that have been watching this morning, everybody pretty much has the same opinion of it is not good. You watch that clip there of her crying, and you just think, you know, the British public aren't silly. You watch it, I believe, and you think, ooh, something is wrong there, and that person knows it's wrong.
And also, you know, the British media have been digging away at this story for what?
Yes,
well over a week.
It's not as if she had. The Telegraph had been digging and digging and digging.
Yeah.
You know, she didn't just choose to do this interview. She could have been clear about this, you know, days ago.
But she couldn't have been, William. The injunction, the court-ordered injunction.
But that's an injunction that she's decided. She could have restricted it herself. The injunction was lifted under.
The court order was only lifted when she applied for it to be. So she took the step to lift the court order injunction, and that is why I do have a certain element of sympathy for her. I get politics. I get that it's dirty. I get that it's nasty.
But it doesn't have to be. Buying a flat in Hove is meant to be a genteel, aspirational experience that most of us couldn't even dream of. It's meant to be delightful. It's not meant to be dirty and nasty.
The complication of her affairs are her problem.
Let's have a word with former Labour advisor Stella Tatsangidou, because she's going to give a different perspective on this, I'm quite sure. Stella, you're seeing the same as us. You're reading the same information. You've seen the Deputy Prime Minister looking, very sad on telly. What do you think?
I'm just so upset. I'm so upset and angry that the witch hunt of Angela Rayner has led to this. Because from the beginning of her career, from the beginning that people saw her meteoric rise in politics, they've tried to grind her down, snooping around, trying to find the smallest thing. And for sure, she clearly got the wrong advice on this one. Clearly, the advice she was given was not correct. But it is a complicated matter, and if you ask tax advisors, they will tell you this is not a clear-cut issue. It is complicated. It is hard to know exactly what to do.
Stella, hang on a minute. It really isn't remotely complicated. It's a house and a flat. It's not an enormous empire, a consortium's international organisation. It's not some enormous takeover of a huge international company. It's one house in Ashton-under-Lyne and a flat in Hove. It's not at all complicated.
It's not fraud. It's not fraud. It's oversight. It's not fraud, it's tax oversight. Now, here's what...
Excuse me, Stella, why has she apologised? If there's nothing wrong and it's a mere oversight, why is she saying she's terribly sorry, and why has she referred
herself to... An oversight is wrong. An oversight still means that she has to rectify her mistake.
But an oversight means you didn't quite notice it.
It's not intentional fraud. It's not intentional fraud. And I do have a lot of sympathy for her. She has a disabled son. She put that money in the trust for her son, who is going to need care throughout his life. She is a woman who comes from a background where she really does have to support herself. This is not something that a lot of politicians will be able to relate to. And I find it so frustrating, because if we want people with real lives, people who have, especially women who have children, women who do not come from wealthy backgrounds, if we want them to be in politics, then we need to allow them to make mistakes at the same standards that we allow men like Boris Johnson, Nadine Zahawi, Rishi Sunak, and anybody else.
Yeah,
Rishi Sunak's wife, when Rishi Sunak was treasurer in the UK, his wife was a non-dom.
Yes, and that's not a mistake of his. If his wife's a non-dom, that isn't a mistake by Rishi Sunak technically at all. So that's an unfair thing to have said. I think you'll agree, Stella, but I understand why you're going there, and I thank you so much for contributing. Lovely to see you today. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go straight to the phones. The phones, I can actually feel them vibrating. There are so many calls. The whole studio's shaking. Let's go to David in London. David, how are you seeing this?
Thanks for waiting. I am beside myself with rage over this. I mean, Vanessa, just listen to what you've just said now, and to the other guys. You've taken the words right out of my mouth.
Which ones?
What you just, I mean, basically, if she was going to, she's not going down the road to buy a loaf of bread. She was buying another property. She took that, what you said, she took that advice. She was looking for advice on how to do it or not do it. It's outrageous that she's coming back now and she's saying that she's sorry. She's sorry now because she's been caught out.
And what do you feel, David, about the Prime Minister? David, what do you think about the Prime Minister saying, I am privileged, I think he said, to be standing next to the Deputy Prime Minister? So it looks as if at this moment there's going to be great solidarity. We're well aware, though, aren't we, from all our life experience, that it doesn't always last, that great affiliation and loyalty. But we'll see, won't we? What do you think, what do you predict will happen next, David?
I think, like you said, she will fall on her sword. She will have to. There's enough people talking about this now already. This is going to go global. This is global. It's not going to go away. She can't carry on in that position. Whether she's done right or wrong, she has done a massive, massive mistake. This is not going to go away overnight. She can't just say sorry now and expect people to believe her. It's quite sad, actually. It's quite sad that, she was in that position and we kind of fell for it. We believed in her as a person, as a woman in that position.
I just want to check, David, your use and her use of the word mistake. Was it a mistake, or was it actually, technically, something she did on purpose, having taken expensive advice and extensive advice? It wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate choice, which has turned out and now been discovered to have been the wrong choice. Is that a mistake? Or is it only a mistake after it's discovered?
A mistake after it's discovered. It absolutely, Vanessa. You know, she can't say that now. She can't say it was a mistake. It's terrible for her to say that. It's just making the situation worse.
Appreciate the call. David's very angry. Stella was furious. Everyone's very annoyed.
I just think we're being. I really do think we're being unfair, and I'm really shocked at the venom that is coming across in terms of this woman who has been hounded.
But who did
from the minute
use
she
the
came into
phrase Tory scum?
and
that's venomous.
And she did, and she had to apologise for that. Now, what we do not know, and I've got to throw it out there to my legal brethren, we do not know if she was given the wrong advice or half wrong or fully wrong or whatever. It's going to be looked at, it's going to be investigated. But when we think about her as a person who was going through a divorce, we know how mind-scrambling that can be. And we understand as well now that this was also in relation to the care of her disabled child. We need to just stop and take a breath. I think we have become a society where we are so desperate to rip people apart when we don't just allow the process.
The lawyer was making some really good points. There are some levels, on a real basic level, it is a case of, you know, there's sympathy, I would imagine, from everybody for what she's going through in life. Take away her role in politics. But when you step into the role of politics, everything will be scrutinized, everything will be questioned. If you think there's the slightest bit of wrongdoing that way, you are going to stop and make sure that there's not, because it always ends the same way, how it's ended now. And the next step will be how it always ends as well.
Yeah, and also can I add that I have to dispute Stella's assertion that journalists shouldn't root around Angela Rayner and her affairs. They should root around all affairs of all politicians, all leading politicians. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's not some reason because she's, you know, working class. It's absolutely nothing to do with that. And I would also, I mean, I think Angela Rayner is a very popular. She's very.
No, it's not. No, it's not. They don't want to see a working class girl done good.
Absolute
garbage. Deputy Prime Minister.
She's garbage. She's a very successful. She's one of the most successful. She's one of the most successful politicians in the country.
Yes, exactly.
She deserves that level of scrutiny, as every other successful politician.
All right,
gets.
let's bring in Julia. She's in the West Midlands, and I think she's more forgiving than our last caller. Julia, how do you feel about this one?
I don't agree with the comments that have just been related. I'm very sad to see that someone like Angela Rayner, who and everything she represents, is being sort of dismantled by this, because yes, she's made a mistake. She's definitely not the first. She won't be the last. And I think from the day one that she became housing minister in government, that woman has been picked on her accent, her appearance, her tattoos. She's in a dinghy with a vape. I mean, it really sort of is sort of one rule for her, another rule for all these, you know, people who have gone before, and particularly white men who have, you know, had lots of advantages that she has never had. And this is an £800,000 property in Brighton. I understand that this draw is over. I mean, in Hove. I mean, what exactly is the value of that in the grand scheme of things, when I'm sure properties down there are, you know, going for millions, some of them.
But Julia, honestly, you may be quite right in thinking that people have been snobbish about her, criticised her clothes, her appearance, her vaping in that canoe or whatever it was. You may be absolutely right about that. But that actually doesn't really have any bearing at all on her tax affairs and whether she has or hasn't paid the correct amount. And she hasn't, and she admits that she hasn't, and she says that she hasn't. So whatever anybody thinks about her snootily or nastily isn't really relevant to this. This is something that she has done and is wrong.
But also remember, Boris Johnson was ripped to shreds by the press. There's been photographs of him on the beach. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, journalists do not make these judgments about class. They make them on the basis of colourful politicians. Sure, you know, they're more attracted to write about the people who have big personalities, and she is one of the big personality beasts in the political jungle. But it's not about class. It's about rooting around and thinking if there's a story there. It's literally, you know, that's the motivation.
Let's bring in Philomena. Hello, Philomena. She's in Blackpool. What do you think, Philomena?
Hello, Vanessa.
Hello.
If we take the morals and the ethics out of this story, she has been so silly, because this isn't the first time she's had some problems with property, I believe.
No, that's right.
Something about the selling of her council house some time ago. Now, did she not learn from that what not to do in the position that she's in as housing minister?
And the answer is no, evidently, isn't it? Did she not learn? That's a beautiful, beautiful rhetorical question you're giving me, Philomena, which I answer. Evidently, she did not learn. No, did she?
She didn't. So on that basis alone, can she stay in that position for being so silly?
What do you think?
No, and it's a shame. And I agree with some of the things that the other ladies put forward about her personal circumstances. But I could not bring my personal circumstances to work and expect to be let off making a massive, massive mistake or error. So when you come into politics...
But Philomena, in terms of that mistake, Philomena, which she's now saying that, yes, I have made, do we allow her to make amends for that mistake? And I'm saying, let's allow her to do that. Let's allow her to go through the process, to go through the investigative process and to await the outcome of that, instead of us all deciding her fate right now.
But yeah, that will happen.
But
look, she'll join the backbenchers and she'll come back in a year's time as health secretary. It's always works.
Yes, on the show, talking about it.
Don't you think, Paula, though, everybody, every single person watching this, everybody who voted, everyone who didn't vote, is entitled to have a view on this?
Oh, absolutely.
We don't have to wait for anything. We're allowed to have a view right now, aren't we?
You're not going to be able to stop people talking about this. And like you said, we are literally shaking here from the phone lines. But what I'm saying is the judgment. It's this heavy judgment, and why it's so hard for people to go into politics. Why we don't have those ordinary people saying, I'm going to take the risk to go into politics, but hang on a minute, I'm a human being and I'm going to make mistakes. Oh, but Boris is allowed to make mistakes.
Well, no, he wasn't.
He had to quit. Not Prime Minister anymore.
No, he wasn't. He quit over a piece of cake.
After mistake, after mistake, after mistake.
And was pushed out.
We are talking about Angela Rayner being admitting to making one mistake.
Yes, but I'm still not at all sure about the word mistake.
Well, as in choice.
Because I think it wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate choice. It was a choice to try and pay much less tax than she ought to have paid.
I don't think we know that yet, Vanessa, to be fair.
She made that choice to do it. Nobody was coercing her into making that decision. And she made the decision. And now she has to take the consequences.
But you are right. I do agree. You know, it doesn't encourage people. Politics is a very hard business.
Yeah.
Terrible hours, I have to say. I think generally terrible pay and hideous amounts of scrutiny. But that's what it's like, and you go into the business and you know that. I'm excited because, Calum, I think, it's time for you to step forward.
I'm ready. Let's go. I don't even know if I can talk about this topic, but I think I'm faring all right at the moment.
I just wonder whether this is one of those occasions where the Prime Minister some people might agree, yet again, failed to take the temperature, failed to read the room,
well,
he's standing
too busy.
shoulder to shoulder,
he's
and
too busy
going
undermining.
To look embarrassed later on today.
He's far too busy undermining his Chancellor, which he did yesterday.